Oliver Queen is hot on the trails of a serial killer, but little does he know he might very well end up being the killer's next victim. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Green Arrow issues number 21 to 23, as we catch up on this Chris Condon series together, shall we? So then, as we've been doing all arc long, this issue actually opens up with a little wraparound piece. In this case, it's a flashback to a very important council meeting involving the Freshwater community. It was here the residents who had been poisoned by the Horton Chemical Facility's runoff decided to have it out with their corrupt local and political leaders, many whose names you'll remember as the Freshwater Killer's victims back in the present. Despite their pleas for help and the fact that they are all indeed getting sicker, the poor townspeople all get brushed off by the council, who is doing a lot of talking but not a lot of actual listening. Again, in the previous video I likened this to what was going on with the poisoned drinking water in Flint, Michigan, but many eagle-eyed viewers were also quick to draw much more direct parallels between this comic book story and the events of New York's Love Canal. In that case, it was the very real Hooker Chemical Company that was poisoning people. Hooker, Horton, how about that? It's here too that Brenda, the mother of Kenny, the little boy we've been seeing all series long, takes the floor and gives a heart-rending, impassionate speech about how she only moved to Freshwater to try and give her son the type of better life that she herself never had, how she worked her fingers to the bone and spent every cent she had to become a homeowner, only to be heartbroken to learn that it's this very home that's slowly killing her son and everyone else in the community, and that no one in power really seems to care one way or another. Now, back in the present and picking up from where the last issue left off, Ollie is at home when he ends up getting jumped by another person dressed as the Freshwater Killer, but how is that possible? Didn't we see the lady under the mask, another sick person, end up dropping dead? Well, that was true. But now it's pretty obvious there's more than one Freshwater Killer, one more person with an axe to grind against the Horton Chemical Company and their board of directors, which not too long ago just so happened to include, you guessed it, Oliver Queen. Green Arrow defends himself from this onslaught and quickly ends up gaining the upper hand. In fact, it's right around here the book does something really interesting. The killer winces and begs for his life when Ollie puts him through a window, and that's because, well, this guy isn't your regular run-of-the-mill costumed supervillain. He's just an aggrieved father trying to avenge his wife and daughter who died because of the Horton Chemical plant. In fact, when he unmasks, we see that he is one of the dudes from that community meeting. Ollie was next on the Horton hit list because he was in power at the time of the Freshwater poisoning. In fact, he signed off on all the chemical dumping. Ollie actually fights tooth and nail, saying that he would never do something like that, only to find his signature on some papers that Ted had handy. Now back over with Detective Benítez, she decides to actually look into this Freshwater community connection to this series of murders. Again, if you'll recall, Benítez felt that Green Arrow was something of a leftist radical, and as such, of course, he would blame big business as the true root cause at the center of all these crimes. Understandably, she's pretty shocked when she actually does research Freshwater and realize, holy crap, Green Arrow was 100% correct. Oh, but it gets better too, as Benítez finds out from one of the other cops in the precinct apparently another one of Horton's CEOs has been murdered, meaning that they're either dealing with a copycat criminal or more than likely the Freshwater Killer is more than one person. This other cop also speaks disparagingly of the dead woman from the previous issue, when Benítez implies that maybe she should be given some sympathy, only for this guy to go, oh yeah, we'll give all these killers a pat on the back and maybe a participation trophy too. Needless to say, Benítez has heard everything she needs to, and as issue 21 comes to a close, she packs up her dog Arrow and decides to actually look into the ruins of Freshwater herself, which of course in the intervening years has become a wildly creepy ghost town. Now issue 22 starts with probably the most important flashback of the entire series so far. We check on in again with Kenny, who is now a full-grown adult leading a survivors group for victims of the Horton chemical spill. At first, this starts like a regular old support group, sharing their grief, trying to prop each other up, but eventually we start to realize what Kenny's real intentions are here. You see, as we learn not long after Horton's chemical dumping was outed, they did what all rich companies do in this situation, cut a bunch of checks and hope that they could just sweep all the bad press under a rug. Oh sure, the victims got money, but it wasn't near enough to live comfortably. Hell, it was barely enough to cover their medical bills, and in the case of Kenny's mother Brenda, it didn't even save her from the breast cancer. That all hurt terribly, but the worst part is the feeling that just because this evil company wrote them a check, the rest of the world could just forget these people and what they suffered. Kenny refuses to be forgotten, and this support group quickly ends up becoming a full-on army. Now back in the present, Ollie ends up turning over Ted to the police, though he is sure to say that this was just a regular old break-in. Because quite frankly, Green Arrow isn't still 100% sure who exactly he can trust with any of these new leads he has on the Freshwater Killer. The cops say that Ollie should go into hiding in case someone makes an attempt on his life again, but Ollie manages to give them all the slip by acting like a doofus. It's after that he ends up suiting up and taking out the brand new Green Arrow cycle for a spin, and I gotta say, this is a cool-ass panel. Normally, I think goggles are a lazy addition to costumes when they redesign them for superheroes, but here I appreciate that they actually serve a purpose. Yeah, Green Arrow is wearing goggles because he actually needs them for riding. Now back over with Benítez, she's still looking for clues in the Freshwater community when she ends up getting jumped by Kenny and the rest of the masked killers. She fights valiantly against them, but she's just one cop against several armed individuals. Thankfully, her dog Arrow does end up managing to escape, which will end up being very important later as the dog is able to lead Green Arrow to the schoolhouse where Kenny and the other Freshwaters have taken Benítez to be killed. Kenny gives a whole speech about how the building is already falling in on itself because, well, the town was never exactly built to last, was it? And it's with all of that we end up coming to issue 23, the newest issue at the time of this recording. And once more, like all the other issues, we're treated to a very important flashback. Now again, if you remember in the last Green Arrow video, I talked a lot of mad shit about Freshwater's costume design. How I thought it was really lame and derivative. Well, it feels like Chris Condon heard my criticism because literally Kenny gives an entire speech where he explains the significance of each piece of the Freshwater's gear. Yes, they wear gas masks not just because they look cool and intimidating, but also because they are making their base in a poisonous ghost town. Then there's the red overcoat, meant to represent spilled blood, but also Little Red Riding Hood, led astray and deceived by big bad wolves, in this case Horton Chemical. Then there's the pipes, which they use as weapons. Again, makes a lot of sense, poison water pumped through pipes. But also, the pipes were never actually meant to kill the Freshwater's victims, instead only to incapacitate them so that they could be drowned in the same poison water that they slowly used to kill this community over time. Again, it's all very thematic and all very pointed. Now back in the present, Green Arrow fights his way inside the schoolhouse, taking out several Freshwater guards along the way. It seems that Kenny and his group of co-conspirators are hoping to kill Benítez to cover their tracks once and for all, drowning her in the same well of contaminated water that they've been getting their murder weapons from. Now, in a nice bit of characterization, Benítez actually comes full circle by showing sympathy for Kenny and the plight of the rest of the town, saying that she understands what happened to them and why they're so angry, but that he's taken it all too far. Of course, Kenny isn't hearing any of this, saying that Benítez is just like everyone else in his life, giving him empty platitude after empty platitude. Words won't bring his mother back, words won't heal this community, but action just might. This is where Green Arrow ends up swooping on in to make the save as a massive melee breaks out between our hero and all the other different Freshwaters. It's during the battle Green Arrow is even forced to admit out loud that he's a little conflicted in this situation, that Kenny and the other Freshwaters are unlike anyone else he's normally fought. They're not your traditional run-of-the-mill supervillains or serial killers or even a criminal conspiracy. They're just a pissed-off local community, crying out for anyone to listen to them and trying to serve justice when it was clearly not before. Though Green Arrow also admits that Kenny and his followers may have taken things a little too far. It was one thing to try and kill all the evil CEOs and politicians who got rich wronging them, but now they're all dead, meaning Kenny and his followers could stop, and yet somehow they haven't. They're still out here trying to kill people like Green Arrow and Benítez for even daring to look into what they've done. Ollie says that it's true the Freshwaters are victims of a broken world, but they didn't exactly make anything better by just breaking more stuff. Again, Kenny doesn't want to hear any of this, and he even ends up taking off his mask before making one last major run against Green Arrow, him clearly wanting the hero to look him in the eye as he squeezes the life out of him. Thankfully, by this point, Benítez managed to get herself free and takes Kenny out herself. The day is saved, but once again, this does not feel like a happy ending. Several people people are dead and this poor community still knows no justice. Worse still, Green Arrow is forced to get really insightful as the comic comes to a close. The Freshwaters are honestly a lot like the vigilantes he hangs out with, people who were wronged, who felt pain, who donned masks and costumes because they thought that they could make the world around them a little better, a little bit more fair, a little bit more just. And yet here they all are now. It's a real there but for the grace go I type of situation, isn't it? And so that was Green Arrow issues number 21, 22, and 23, and man am I glad that I was able to find an open space in my release schedule to come back to this one. Hell, I said it before and I'll say it again, this series actually reads a lot better in chunks. On their own, the individual issues actually move at a pretty damn breakneck pace. One that might actually have annoyed me had I actually read this one when these issues came out individually, but taken all together as a whole, I really appreciate more of what the creative team was actually trying to do on this one. And yeah, I could sit here and say that I have seen this sort of story before, a very sort of hot fuzz murder on the Orient Express. You thought you were dealing with one individual, but it was actually a lot more than that. But for what it's worth, I did actually feel that this was a fun, exciting, often atmospheric take on that very tried and true sort of mystery story. I think Gordon has a good handle on Ollie as a character. It's fun to see him get to be so introspective, and it's also nice to see a character like Benítez actually have an arc. Overall, I think I'd feel comfortable giving this one another very solid 8 out of 10. It's good stuff, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to tell y'all about it. Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers, a lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind the scenes concept art for Capes and Quest. That's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and, help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.